Welcome. Today we're diving into the world of government intervention in markets. Have you ever wondered why some goods have maximum or minimum prices or how taxes affect buyers and sellers? In this video, we'll break down the essentials of price ceilings, price floors, tax incidence, and deadweight loss. These concepts are crucial for understanding how governments try to balance fairness, efficiency, and economic stability. We'll start by exploring what price controls are and why governments use them, then move on to real-world examples and the economic consequences of these policies. Let's get started on this journey to demystify government intervention in markets. Price ceilings are government-imposed limits on how high a price can be charged for a product. The goal is often to make essential goods more affordable for consumers, especially during times of crisis or shortage. For example, rent controls in big cities are a common type of price ceiling. By capping the maximum rent landlords can charge, governments hope to ensure housing remains accessible. However, while the intention is to help consumers, price ceilings can sometimes lead to unintended consequences, such as shortages or reduced quality. Next, we'll look at how these ceilings affect both buyers and sellers in the market. Let's take a closer look at rent control, a classic example of a price ceiling. In cities with high demand for housing, governments may set a legal maximum rent to protect tenants from skyrocketing costs. While this helps some renters, it can also discourage landlords from maintaining properties or building new units. Over time, this can reduce the overall supply of rental housing, making it even harder for people to find a place to live. This example shows how price ceilings, while well-intentioned, can sometimes create more problems than they solve. When a price ceiling is set below the market equilibrium, it often leads to shortages. This means the quantity demanded exceeds the quantity supplied, resulting in long lines, waiting lists, or even black markets. Sellers may not find it profitable to offer their goods or services at the capped price, leading to lower quality or reduced availability. These unintended consequences highlight the trade-offs involved in government intervention. Next, we'll see how the opposite policy, price floors, works in practice. Price floors are the flip side of price ceilings. Instead of capping prices, a price floor sets a legal minimum that sellers can charge for a good or service. The most well-known example is the minimum wage, which ensures workers receive at least a certain hourly pay. Governments use price floors to protect producers or workers from prices that are considered too low. However, just like price ceilings, price floors can have side effects such as surpluses or unemployment. Let's explore how these policies play out in real markets. Minimum wage is a classic example of a price floor. A law employers must pay workers at least a set hourly rate. This policy aims to ensure a basic standard of living for workers and reduce poverty. However, if the minimum wage is set above the market equilibrium, it can lead to unemployment, as some employers may not be able to afford as many workers. This example shows how price floors can help some people while creating challenges for others. When a price floor is set above the equilibrium price, it often leads to surpluses. This means the quantity supplied exceeds the quantity demanded. For example, if the government sets a high minimum price for agricultural products, farmers may produce more than consumers are willing to buy. The result is unsold goods, wasted resources, or the need for government to purchase the surplus. These outcomes show the complex effects of price floors on market. Both price ceilings and price floors are tools governments use to influence markets. While they aim to protect consumers or producers, these policies can create shortages, surpluses, and other unintended consequences. Understanding these effects helps us see why economists often debate the best ways to intervene in markets. Next, we'll shift our focus to another form of government intervention: taxes and their impact on buyers and sellers. Taxes are another powerful tool governments use to raise revenue and influence behavior. But who really pays the tax, the buyer or the seller? The answer depends on the concept of tax incidence, which examines how the burden of a tax is shared between both parties. Understanding tax incidence helps us see why the legal responsibility for paying a tax doesn't always match the economic reality. Let's break down how this works in practice. When a tax is imposed on a good, the price buyers pay usually goes up. This means consumers may end up shouldering part of the tax burden, even if the tax is officially levied on sellers. For example, a tax on gasoline often leads to higher prices at the pump, affecting drivers directly. The extent to which buyers bear the tax depends on how sensitive they are to price changes, also known as price elasticity of demand. Sellers also feel the impact of taxes. When a tax is placed on a product, sellers may receive less money for each unit sold, even if the tax is legally collected from buyers. This can reduce profits and may lead some sellers to leave the market. The share of the tax that sellers bear depends on how easily they can adjust their supply, known as price elasticity of supply. The more flexible they are, the less of the tax they pay. Division of the tax burden between buyers and sellers depends on the relative elasticities of supply and demand. If demand is inelastic, buyers are less sensitive to price changes and bear more of the tax. If supply is inelastic, sellers bear more. This principle helps explain why taxes on necessities like gasoline or cigarettes often fall more heavily on consumers. Understanding elasticity is key to predicting the real impact of taxes. Economists often use supply and demand graphs to illustrate tax incidence. A tax shifts the supply or demand curve, depending on who is legally responsible for paying it. The new equilibrium shows how much of the tax is paid by buyers in the form of higher prices and how much by sellers in the form of lower net revenue. This visual tool helps clarify the real-world effects of taxes on market participants. Deadweight loss refers to the loss of economic efficiency that occurs when market outcomes are distorted by policies like taxes, price ceilings, or price floors. In other words, it's the value of trades that don't happen because of government intervention. Deadweight loss represents the cost of these policies, as resources are not used in the most efficient way possible. Next, we'll see how deadweight loss appears in different scenarios. When a tax is imposed, it raises the price buyers pay and lowers the price sellers receive. This reduces the quantity bought and sold, creating a gap between what consumers are willing to pay and what producers are willing to accept. The result is fewer transactions and a deadweight loss. The size of this loss depends on how much the tax reduces market activity. The more elastic the supply and demand, the greater the deadweight loss. Price ceilings can also create deadweight loss. By capping prices below equilibrium, some mutually beneficial trades don't occur. For example, in a rent-controlled market, some landlords may choose not to rent out their properties and some tenants can't find housing. This means both sides miss out on potential gains from trade, leading to inefficiency in the market. Similarly, price floors can cause deadweight loss by preventing trades that would have happened at lower prices. For instance, if the minimum wage is set too high, some workers who would have accepted lower wages can't find jobs and some employers can't hire as many workers. This leads to lost opportunities and inefficiency in the labor market. Government interventions like price controls and taxes often involve trade-offs between equity and efficiency. While these policies aim to make markets fairer or protect vulnerable groups, they can also reduce overall economic efficiency. Policymakers must weigh these trade-offs when designing interventions, considering both the benefits and the costs to society. Governments intervene in markets for many reasons: to protect consumers, support producers, correct market failures, or achieve social goals. Price ceilings and floors are just two examples of the tools they use. Taxes are another, helping fund public services and influence behavior. Understanding the rationale behind these interventions helps us evaluate their effectiveness and potential drawbacks. In a free market without government intervention, prices are determined by the forces of supply and demand. The equilibrium price is where the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. This outcome is usually efficient, maximizing the total benefits to buyers and sellers. However, it may not always be considered fair or socially desirable, which is why governments sometimes step in. Shortages occur when the quantity demanded exceeds the quantity supplied, often as a result of price ceilings. For example, during a natural disaster, governments may cap prices on essentials like water or gasoline. While this helps prevent price gouging, it can also lead to empty shelves and long lines as suppliers can't keep up with demand at the lower price. When price ceilings create shortages, black markets may emerge. In these underground markets, goods are sold illegally at higher prices. This allows some buyers and sellers to bypass the official price cap, but it also undermines the policy's goals and can lead to further problems such as reduced safety or quality. Black markets highlight the challenges of enforcing price controls. Another consequence of price ceilings is a reduction in quality. When sellers can't charge enough to cover their costs, they may cut corners or offer lower quality goods and services. For example, landlords under rent control may delay repairs or maintenance, leading to deteriorating housing conditions. This is another trade-off policymakers must consider. Surpluses happen when the quantity supplied exceeds the quantity demanded, often due to price floors. For instance, if the government sets a high minimum price for milk, farmers may produce more than consumers want to buy. The excess milk may go to waste or the government may have to buy and store it, leading to additional costs. One of the main concerns with price floors like the minimum wage is unemployment. If employers can't afford to hire as many workers at the higher wage, some people may lose their jobs or struggle to find work. This is especially true for low-skilled workers or in industries with tight profit margins. Policymakers must balance the benefits of higher wages with the risk of job losses. Deal with surpluses caused by price floors. Governments sometimes buy up the excess supply. This helps support producers, but it can be expensive and lead to stockpiles of unsold goods. For example, the European Union has purchased surplus butter and milk to support farmers, but storing and managing these goods creates additional challenges. Taxes are a major source of government revenue, funding public services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. While taxes can create deadweight loss, they also provide essential resources for society. The challenge for policymakers is to design tax systems that raise enough revenue without causing too much inefficiency or unfairness. Excise taxes are taxes on specific goods like cigarettes, alcohol, or gasoline. These taxes are often used to discourage consumption of harmful products or to raise revenue for targeted programs. The burden of excise taxes depends on the elasticity of demand and supply, just like other taxes. Policymakers use excise taxes to influence behavior as well as raise money. Sales taxes are added to the price of most goods and services. Consumers pay these taxes at the point of sale, and businesses collect and remit the money to the government. Sales taxes can be regressive, meaning they take a larger percentage of income from low-income households. Policymakers sometimes exempt necessities like food or medicine to reduce this effect. Let's look at some examples of tax incidents. If the demand for a product is very inelastic like insulin for diabetics, consumers will bear most of the tax. If supply is inelastic like beachfront property, sellers bear more. These examples show how the characteristics of the market determine who ultimately pays the tax. It's important to distinguish between the legal and economic incidence of a tax. The legal incidence refers to who is required by law to pay the tax, while the economic incidence is about who actually bears the burden. For example, even if a tax is legally imposed on sellers, part of the cost may be passed on to buyers through higher prices. Tax wedge is the difference between what buyers pay and what sellers receive after a tax is imposed. This wedge reduces the quantity traded in the market, leading to deadweight loss. The size of the wedge depends on the tax rate and the elasticities of supply and demand. Understanding tax wedges helps explain the broader impact of taxes on market activity. Every government intervention involves trade-offs. Price ceilings may make goods more affordable but can cause shortages. Price floors may protect incomes but can lead to surpluses. Taxes raise revenue but can reduce market efficiency. Policymakers must balance these goals and consider the unintended consequences of their decisions. To evaluate the effectiveness of price controls and taxes, economists look at both the intended and unintended effects. They consider how policies impact prices, quantities, market participants, and overall welfare. This analysis helps guide future decisions and improve policy design. Unintended consequences are common with government intervention. For example, rent controls may lead to housing shortages while minimum wages can cause unemployment. Taxes can create black markets or encourage tax evasion. Policymakers must anticipate these effects and adjust their strategies accordingly. Prices send important signals to buyers and sellers about what to produce and consume. When governments intervene, these signals can be distorted, leading to inefficiencies. For example, price ceilings may discourage investment in new housing while price floors can encourage overproduction. Understanding market signals is key to designing effective policies. Implementing and enforcing price controls and taxes involves administrative costs. Governments must monitor compliance, investigate violations, and resolve disputes. These costs can add up, reducing the net benefits of intervention. Efficient policy design aims to minimize these administrative burdens. Different countries use price controls and taxes in various ways. For example, some nations have strict rent controls while others rely more on market forces. Comparing these approaches helps us learn what works and what doesn't and can inspire better policy solutions. History offers many examples of government intervention in markets. During World War II, many countries imposed price ceilings to prevent inflation and ensure access to essentials. In the 1970s, the US used price controls on oil, leading to shortages and long gas lines. These cases show both the potential benefits and pitfalls of intervention. Today, debates about price controls and taxes continue. Should governments raise the minimum wage? Should rent controls be expanded or eliminated? How should taxes be structured to balance revenue and fairness? These questions are at the heart of economic policy and affect millions of people. Venezuela provides a dramatic example of price controls gone wrong. The government imposed strict price ceilings on food and other essentials, hoping to make them affordable. Instead, these controls led to severe shortages, black markets, and economic collapse. This case highlights the risks of heavy-handed intervention without considering market realities. Seattle raised its minimum wage to one of the highest levels in the U.S. Supporters argued it would lift workers out of poverty, while critics warned of job losses. Studies found mixed results, with some workers benefiting and others losing hours or jobs. This case shows the complexity of predicting policy outcomes. Effective policy design requires clear goals, careful analysis, and flexibility to adapt to changing conditions. Policymakers should consider both the intended and unintended effects of intervention and be willing to adjust policies as new information emerges. Good policy balances equity, efficiency, and practicality. Let's recap what we've learned. Price ceilings and floors are tools for controlling prices, but they can create shortages and surpluses. Taxes raise revenue but can reduce market efficiency and create deadweight loss. The effects of these policies depend on market conditions and elasticity. Understanding these concepts helps us evaluate government intervention more critically. As economies evolve, the debate over government intervention will continue. New challenges like technological change and globalization may require fresh approaches to price controls and taxation. By understanding the principles behind these policies, we can better navigate the complex world of economic policy and make informed decisions as citizens and voters.